but we won't get to see his face all the time, but he is going to be listening in.
Hope this isn't distracted driving for him. So.
I think he said somebody else was driving.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if Mark or Jennifer, I don't see Mayor Cornett having logged on yet. Did we connect with him? He wouldn't be on Prime Gov, but
I don't know anything about that, Lisa.
okay. Okay.
Maybe.
This is Lisa. Mark Beck was going to get in touch with him and send him the link.
Okay. All right.
And Teresa, when you call for a vote, Harry can just at that time tell whether he votes yes or no without
Okay.
me prompting him
morning.
if he wants to do that.
Okay, great. Yeah.
This is Mark Beck. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone need assistance signing into Prime Gov? I see a few of you are not yet there.
Do you see me in there? I think I am.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Shay Morris.
Hey, Morris. Yes, I do.
Jennifer, do you see
Perfect.
me? This is Monique Bruner.
Yes.
Okay.
I see Brenda Hernandez just signed in. The only others, Ali Shin, Russell Pace. I don't know if Councilperson Stone Cipher is joining us. He's also not signed in.
And I don't see Allie or Councilman Stone Cipher yet on Zoom.
Right.
Jennifer, this is Kevin Guanair. Do you see me on the Prime?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
This is Laura McDevitt in the city attorney's office. And I just wanted to make sure that at the beginning of the meeting, we do a roll call, just so it's clear when members are arriving or leaving the meeting. So it's clear who's present when.
And Laura, would you like that done prior to the meeting being called to order, or shortly after, or immediately after?
Well, if I suppose immediately before is fine. So then it's certain that we have a quorum.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started if there are no objections, but I'll start by reading the meeting convening message. So thank you for joining us for the Maps for Citizens Advisory Board video conference meeting. We have a few announcements to make regarding the video conferencing meeting. If the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the audio-video connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored in 15 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued at 1:30 later today, October 1st, 2020, via video conference. The agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. To speak on any certain item, please call in advance of the meeting 405-297-3467 or text your request to 405-205-4195. Please include your name, the agenda item number, and the reason you would like to speak. Please submit your request prior to the beginning of the meeting, which means now, to avoid receiving your request after the item has been considered. City staff will attempt to submit these requests during the meeting to process them during the meeting by the chair. To speak under comments by the board, staff, and citizen, please call 405-297-3467 or text 405-205-4195. Again, please list your name, address, phone number, and the subject on which you wish to address the board. Okay, so let's take a roll call prior to calling the meeting to order.
Teresa Rose Crook,
Present?
Russell Pace, Mr. Pace, are you still with us? Ali Shin, Harry Black, Mr. Black, are you still with us? Shay
Harry,
Norris,
you're muted.
Shay is present.
thank you. Brenda Hernandez,
Present.
Kevin Guinera,
Present.
Daisy Munoz,
Present.
Monique Bruner,
Present.
Bob Nealon,
Present.
Mark Stonecipher. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. We will go ahead and call our meeting to order. The first order of business is to approve minutes of the September 3rd, 2020 MAPS 4 Citizens Advisory Board special meeting. So I hope that you all have had an opportunity to review, and I would take a motion for approval of the minutes or comments. Okay, I do recognize that there was a correction. So we have a motion and a second, but we do have a correction, and it is on page 3, the second full paragraph, which starts Ms. Bruner, and it's on the second line. It looks like there's a word missing, and I'll give Harry credit for this. He pointed it out. So it reads, Ms. Munoz thought that and we think probably name should be included there, was connected to the current building. So if we can add name to that sentence.
Teresa, this is Harry Black. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I think I finally figured out the right screen to be on.
Okay.
So I am present.
Fantastic. And Harry, did you hear that when we do have a vote, you can just do a verbal vote and that will count that?
Do an audible vote?
Yes.
Okay, it'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other comments about the minutes? All right, please vote yay, nay.
Yes.
This is Russell Pace. I'll be voting yes.
Brenda, it looks like we need your vote.
Teresa, I voted, but I don't know if it's going through because it's still on the voting page. Well, now it says pass, but it didn't pop up with the
Right.
summary of the vote.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it took just a little minute, but thank you. Yes. All right, great. Thank you for that vote. So our next item on our agenda is to receive the MAPS for Revenue and Expenditure Report ending September 24th, 2020. And I think David is going to present that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. You have in your packet the MAPS for Revenue and Expenditure Report for the period ending September 24th, 2020. On the revenue side for the month, there's $9,802,545, and for a total today to September 24th of $38,589,920. You can see that we've listed there that we're about 10.7% below target for obvious reasons. I think everybody understands that, but we've got a lot of time left to catch up on that. So expenditures, we have no expenditures at this point. I'll try to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Hey, any questions of Mr. Todd? Okay. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to receive the report. All those, or everybody, please vote.
Harry Black votes yes.
Russell Pace votes yes.
Okay. Passed. Great. Thank you so much for your votes. Okay, so item 4 on our agenda, continuing with what we have done in our previous meetings, I have asked former Mayor Mick Cornett to visit with us today and share with us a little bit of his experience, his thoughts, and his part in the continuation of the MAPS program. And I just want to say, Mayor, thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule. You thought that this was over, but we still keep tapping into you as a tremendous resource. And I had the opportunity to work with the mayor on MAPS 3 and so appreciate his vision and his leadership with that project. So Mayor Cornett, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Teresa. And you know, I was just thinking back as I listened to the finance report and got to thinking and was looking back to when MAPS started, you know, what, 30 years ago now. You know, the original MAPS didn't have a number. And I think the reason that's important to remember is that, you know, one MAPS has led to another, but if we ever get to a point where the citizens don't feel like they've got their money's worth, or that it was, you know, in improving the city or lived up and met their expectations, that will be the end of the MAPS projects. And I think the Citizen Advisory Board plays a key role in allowing that consumer confidence or citizen confidence, if you will, to continue. From the very beginning, this has been a citizen-led initiative. The citizens voted it in. The citizen advisory boards, through their different installations, has continued to lead the effort, and the city council and the mayor have guided from afar. But you know, I'm going to guess that well above 95% of the suggestions or recommendations by the citizen advisory board have been adopted by mayor and council, have been implemented. A couple of thoughts, and these may be things that other people have said along the way, but perhaps they bear repeating. It's important that the MAPS programming stay on the timetable as much as possible. And I think one of the things I had to learn when I started being involved at the city government level, was that there was a window of opportunity for people to give input and to give ideas. And then at some point that window closes and the city staff and the architects and the engineers and all of the private sector people that are involved have to go execute the project. And it is quite common that after that window of ideas and information closes, then people come up with ideas. And I would just ask you to avoid that impulse. Be involved, be paying attention, and realize that at some point we have to say, this is approved, now go build it, now let's move on to the next one. And the MAPS projects, because of the way that we collect the money before we start the projects, takes a long time to build, 10 years or more in each of the last 3 MAPS proposals. And so continuing to go back and revisit decisions can be very costly and time consuming, and most of all, slow the projects down. And, you know, as the citizens, you know, start looking around at what MAPS is producing, they want to see dirt flying and they want to see buildings coming out of the ground. So I guess that's one thing I think to keep in mind. You're a critical part of the process. But once a decision is made and it's time to move on, we need to move on. And inevitably, you are going to run into people at the coffee shop or the pizza parlor who will bring up an idea or have a suggestion or have a complaint that you may not necessarily have the information to defend or explain. But they are just now hearing about it and they have input and they expect it to be implemented. And I think it's important to remind you know, people in that situation that, look, we had a wide open opportunity for ideas. And we were soliciting thoughts and ideas about where this should go and how it should look and what it should be programmed as. But at some point you have to move forward. Otherwise, we'll wind up like other cities who just never can continually get their traction. The next thing I would say is that the city staff is extremely good. Now, they've been battle warned and tested through the years. And, you know, the first MAPS projects, as I recount in my book, The Next American City, there was all sorts of issues. You know, it was brand new. The city staff didn't have the type of resources and experiences to necessarily build the projects on time and on budget. And it was ripe with stops and starts. But at the end of the day, they got it right. I mean, go look at that canal, go look at the dams, you know, go look at the expenditures that went into transportation and the fairgrounds and the Chesapeake Energy Arena. I mean, those are great projects that have propelled this city forward a long ways. But the lessons that were learned through that MAPS project, I think, were then installed with a great deal of confidence during MAPS for Kids. And that was a very complicated and difficult and potentially emotional time in city government for 75 different schools to receive different levels of involvement and investment. And I don't know that MAPS for Kids ever quite gets the credit it deserved for propelling this city forward and investing in 75 neighborhoods that had not had a whole lot of investment prior. But I think the city staff pulled off an extremely complicated series of citizen involvement in each of the projects and then delivered to the best of their ability, and for the most part, met or exceeded the expectations of the voters and the patrons and the teachers and the parents. MAPS 3, you know, still continues, but I think to this point it has met or exceeded expectations. For the most part, it has stayed on schedule. And MAPS 3 also had the luxury of having excess revenue. You know, we at the city level, you know, try to estimate what that penny on sales tax is going to generate, but you know, it's not an exact science. MAPS is a journey. You estimate what the money is going to be, and everybody holds hands and goes forward, and we make decisions along the way to adjust. And so, you know, we try to make sure that what we told the voters is going to be done to the best of our ability, and we have the best intentions. But sometimes I hear the word promise put into a MAPS project. I would never say anything is promised other than the best intentions, because things change. And that citizen advisory board is key to being able to handle the changes and the city's trajectory and the needs as they come along. But as you deal with the projects, I would just you know, urge you to remember, do the best you can, but then move forward and move on to the next project, because there's going to be a lot more coming down the line. This is going to take you know, 10 years or more, and will have a dramatic effect on the city. So anyway, I'll just stop there. And Teresa, I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Okay. Any questions? Does anybody have any questions of the mayor? We're not always going to have the benefit of his insight. So if you've got any thoughts, now's the time. So I'll ask you a question, Mayor. With, you know, the MAPS 4 group of projects is a little bit different from some of the projects that have been in the previous MAPS programs. What are your thoughts about the projects that we have, and any advice that you would have as we approach our work?
Regardless of the use, it is a stimulus for the economy. You know, you're looking at you know, nearly $1 billion that will be, you know, going to architects, engineers, construction crews, and putting a lot of people to work. And then that money turns over. And so it's a stimulus program for the economy. Now, as far as the uses go, I would maintain that there's an economic development level to addressing social issues in your community that might be holding your community back. You know, through the years, we have largely counted on the private sector to help us deal with most of the social issues that our society has faced. And I think philanthropic and nonprofits are typically better equipped than government to help people that might be dealing with an individual situation. So, you know, I think what MAPS 4 is doing, it is providing a capital infusion for the private sector to continue their best efforts to try to get people back on their feet or out of a bad situation, and to address a situation earlier rather than later, which I think most communities, you know, fall into a trap of doing. I think the projects were formed carefully, and you know, most of the ideas, if not all of the ideas that came before the council in that discovery process are going to be implemented. And you know, once again, Oklahoma City will be far ahead of its peer cities in addressing these issues and making sure we have the facilities to deal with people as they have different needs.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other questions of the mayor while we have his time?
Yes, I have a question. You said, Mayor, that for MAPS 3 there was leftover money. What happens with that money?
It's being distributed. Each of the projects was allowed to come back and explain how they could use additional dollars to fulfill the original mission. And so, I mean, the staff could fill you in much more completely than me. But the additional, when you come up with a project, you decide everything you'd like to put in that project with the money that's allocated. And ultimately, when the project starts the construction phase, et cetera, there will generally be things that have to be taken out of the wish list. And so you have to start making priorities. You know, we'd like to have this, but we're just not going to be able to have the money to do everything we want to do. And you will witness that firsthand. Well, if there are additional dollars, then you can go back later and continue the project to perhaps fill in some of the gaps on the wish list. I think, you know, one example that comes to mind is on the Whitewater facility. The original design came in a little bit over budget, as I recall. And ultimately, there was one pedestrian bridge over the facility to facilitate people getting to the top of the rapids that wasn't added until later when we made sure that we had enough money for all the other projects as well. It makes it a nicer experience, but it wasn't that we couldn't build the facility without it. And so, you know, there's all sorts of things you can go back at later and add. Some of them might seem a little superficial. It might be more landscaping or more public art or something like that. But sometimes it's something more substantial. But the city staff will guide you through that process and help you determine where to draw the line on a project. And hopefully you'll have some money at the end. You can come back and fill in a few of those gaps as needed.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Well, Mayor, thank you so much for your time this morning. Your perspective is valuable and greatly appreciated by this group as we move forward on our decade journey.
Well, I hope the committee will kind of look back at the journey that MAPS has been, and you can go to the library and check out the book I wrote, The Next American City. I'm not trying to say you should go buy it, but I do think you should read it because I did a lot of research on the original maps and can fill in some gaps on Maps for Kids for you. I think that history will be helpful when you kind of run into opportunities or problems and try to figure out how we can, you know, keep the MAPS mission going. It's certainly been important to Oklahoma City thus far.
Great words.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Your book is in my reading list for my.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks. So long, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so item number 5 on our agenda is recommend approval of the contract for the professional consulting services of ADG for the MAPS 4 program. And I think that Dave, present that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So this is the first contract that this group has seen, and this is the contract that we're looking for so we can really get started. I want to remind you that this consultant was chosen based on the standard procedure for choosing consultants within Oklahoma City. We put out an RFQ. Those were shortlisted and 4 firms were interviewed. Ultimately, ADG was recommended to be the firm that we did the contract with. So here we are with contract for ADG, very similar to what we've done with MAPS 3. Somewhat similar to Maps for Kids, but mostly it's really close to Maps 3. So I want to walk you through all the pieces on this, and I want to make sure that everybody understands also that this is a renewable contract, and this first contract is for this first 9 months. So in July, or possibly even sooner if we complete all these tasks, but in July we will renew this contract and we will refashion it as to what we will be doing in that next year. So this first piece of this contract includes, the main part is program initialization, which includes the implementation plan. And that implementation plan, as Mayor Cornett was just talking about, gives us that timeline of how we will complete these projects. And that timeline has to be built based on collections and also availability of staff, and some other aspects to make sure we don't flood the market with certain kinds of projects, but also doing some analysis of the money that will go into the endowment. So under that program initialization, there's the implementation plan. There's project research. We'll be meeting with all of the operators and stakeholders to make sure that there's an understanding of the project. ADG will be providing what's called in this contract a program dashboards. That'll be the way that internally we track the projects, and we can follow what how the progress of those projects go. And then the actual implementation plan document is part of that also. And then the second part is program administration, so setting up their office and getting their staff that works with us day to day doing all the reports, the meeting minutes, the records. Also, a thing that's a little different in this program that we're going to do with MAPS 4 and that the city is pushing for citywide is making sure we have a small and disadvantaged local business program and also a diversity program. So ADG will be helping us keep track of that and how we're doing and what we're doing, and we'll be able to report back to this board where we are as far as the small and disadvantaged local businesses and diversity program. And then part 3 is programming. So each project, we have to identify what each of those projects consist of so that when we hire the consultants, that we already know what the projects are like. And also when we have multiple projects, like you'll see Mr. Cupper talk about here in a little bit with the youth centers, that the youth centers, there's equity between all of those. Now there'll be some subtle differences, but this is very similar to what we called in the MAPS 3 program, the project requirements and the standardization that we had with MAPS for kids. So this is going through and determining everything that would be in these projects. If you look within the contract, there's an Exhibit B that shows how the fees are distributed among the projects. And then there's an Exhibit C, which we call additional services. There's money in the contract that'll be on an as-needed basis. If we need help with some rezoning, if we need some geotechnical, you can see the list of 23 different items that are in there. It just gives us flexibility to do some of these other things. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have about this, but we recommend approval of this, and we are very excited to get started on this, and I know ADG is very excited.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Todd? And I'll also, I believe that Jason Lee with ADG is on the phone as well. But any questions for David? If not, I would take a motion in a second for approval. Please cast your votes.
This is Russell Pace. I vote yes.
Gary Black votes yes.
Hey, the motion passed. Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, David, you are off and running, right?
So we want to start off with this month's round of presentations. Again, to give you an idea of where the projects come from. And I'm going to start off with the presentation on the Senior Health and Wellness Centers. So, Carrie, if you pull that up. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So in MAPS 3, there was $52 million allocated for Senior Health and Wellness Centers, and there were 4 Senior Health and Wellness Centers within the plan. Next slide. Senior Wellness Center number 1 was completed in 2017. Senior Health and Wellness Center number 2 is at the campus of Capitol Hill High School. I'm back up and tell you that Wellness Center 1 is at about Northwest 116th and Rockwell. So Senior Health and Wellness Center 2 on the Capitol Hill High School campus was completed in May of 2018. Senior Wellness Center number 3 is in design, and we will begin construction right after the first of the year. It's located at Northwest 36th and Lincoln. It's in conjunction with the Homeland Grocery Store that'll be built on that same site. And right as we speak right now, they're doing a groundbreaking for that. And then Senior Health and Wellness Center number 4 is at Southwest 138th and Western, also in design, and it's a couple of months behind Senior Wellness Center 3. So its construction will also begin in 2021. Each of those 3 and 4 will take 16 to 18 months to complete. So they'll be coming online very soon. Next slide. Senior Wellness Center 1, let me point out that each of the wellness centers are not the same. And the subcommittee and the advisory board for MAPS 3 did not want them to be the same and just dropped into neighborhoods. They wanted them to respond to the operator's mission and the operator's services, and also the immediate community that they are in. So Senior Center 1 has a lot of social interaction, has exercise opportunities with weights, pickleball, dance, yoga, those kind of things. Each of the centers will have an aquatic component, so the activities including free swim, water aerobics, and then also therapy in the pool. Art activities, as I said, yoga, and Wellness Center 1's mission wasn't so clinic oriented. They do have 2 rooms for some health screenings if they want to do cholesterol screenings or blood pressure screenings or any kind of educational things. They do have 2 rooms there that they can do that. Of course, they could always use their meeting rooms or any of those other rooms that they have within the building. The success of Wellness Center 1 was so great that we've already started a facility expansion. That is in design, and we will start that towards the end of the year, towards the first of next year, adding about $3.5 million worth of facility to that, another gymnasium and a larger meeting room in there, and we're also expanding the locker rooms, remodeling those. So Wellness Center 1 has been a great hit. Carrie. Here's some pictures of Wellness Center 1 if you haven't seen that. There's an exterior view. Next. Interior-wise, this is the main entry. Some of the social areas down that hall to the left. There's pool tables. There's meeting rooms. There's a demonstration kitchen. The art rooms are back in that area. Next slide. Here's the art room. They have I don't know right now, but when they opened, they had a retired Putnam City art teacher who was in there doing the art classes. Next. And here's the pool. All the pools are very similar. They're saltwater pools. They're a combination of lap pool and therapy pool. And I want to point out on that back wall is the 1% for art component that you may know about. If you don't, you'll hear more about it as we go through the program. But there was money allocated for art, done separately outside of our program, but that was the art that was provided for that project. Next. Gymnasium, and as you see right there, they're playing pickleball, very popular at that facility. Next. So Wellness 2 has a different operator and a little different mission. So they still have the social interaction spaces, pardon me, still have the exercise with weights, pickleball, dance, also have a pool just like you saw there, do art activities and yoga. But the main difference is that some of the facility was scaled down so that they could provide 9 exam rooms, and a full pharmacy. So North Care is in conjunction with Variety Care, and they provide much more of the healthcare component than what Facility 1 does. And then also, we're doing a locker room expansion on this. We were led to believe that seniors wouldn't use locker rooms when we first started with these, and the locker rooms are very busy and very crowded, so we've learned that we needed to expand those locker rooms. Next. So Facility 2, as I said, on the Capitol Hill High School complex, exterior view there. Next. Similar to Facility 1, this is the entry. You might see immediately that there's a second floor on this. There's an indoor track in this facility. Next. Social area. And this is one of the meeting rooms. You can see that it's divisible. But it's a multifunction room. They also have a full kitchen. You can see in that picture, whereas Facility 1 does not have a full kitchen. They just have the demonstration kitchen. Next. This is the gymnasium at Wellness Center 2, and you can see that it's definitely smaller. And as I said, some of the spaces were scaled down so that they could have those 9 rooms. So each of the buildings are essentially 40,000 square feet. The budgets are all the same, so they have to do what they want to do, give and take, to make their projects work. Next. This is the workout room. Again, you can see the track above. Next. And pool, very similar to the pool, same size as Wellness Center 1, still salt water, still the combination therapy and lap pool. Next. So as I said, 3 and 4 are in design right now to be completed in about a year and a half. This map shows you the locations of the 4 wellness centers. The green radius is a 3-mile radius. The red is a 5-mile radius. So you can see that the locations cover the majority of the most populated part of Oklahoma City, with the exception of the western area. The MAPS 3 Senior Wellness Center Subcommittee has always been very vocal about wanting to add a 5th center. And that 5th center might go that near western area, near Lake Overholser, that area, to cover that part of the city. They did not receive the funding in MAPS 4 because an additional facility is included, in 3. So an additional facility is included in MAPS 4. So as we go through the process, we'll have to determine exactly where that location may be, but this is just to show you how much coverage we have of the city right now. I anticipate that the Wellness Center for MAPS 4 will be similar to those in MAPS 3. The budget is the same, and we've had a lot of luck with doing what we're doing. Next slide. So that's my presentation. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have about senior health and wellness centers.
Any questions for David?
Hi, this is Shay. I have one for you. David, could you remind me of who is able to use these centers? Is it, are there age or limits? I seem to recall having read something.
That's right. I'm glad you mentioned that. The senior wellness centers are for those 50 and older.
And any, are they directed towards certain income levels, or is it just anybody who can use them?
There are memberships, but they each have sliding scales based on income, and their supplements, scholarships, whatever you want to call them, are available. The goal is to make sure that they're available to everyone. So there are opportunities there, and we would hope that that continues.
Great, thank you so much.
This is Russell Pace. I was curious if any operators emerged yet for the 5th Senior Wellness Center.
I wouldn't say formally, but there's. I think that since we've seen the success, when we first started with the wellness centers, everybody kind of stood against the wall and waited to see what was going to happen because it was so new. But now with the success, I think there's a lot more people who are very interested in being the operators.
Thank you.
Hey, David, this is Kevin Guanera. On the
Yes.
on the 4th location down on Southwestern, I'm trying to visualize which piece of property. I drive that every day. Is that the old Villa Teresa site?
It's right across the street. It's there's a new building being built down there right now.
Yes.
It's directly north of that. It's the 2 5-acre tracts. It partially has a pond on the site, so it's the doctor's office and the house to the south of that.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
And David, can you give us the street exchange right there?
For the 4th one?
Correct.
It's just a little bit south of Southwest 134th. It's about 138th.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Hey, any other questions on the senior health and wellness centers?
Yes, I actually just wanted to hear a little bit about how we're getting the word out to the residents, especially in those surrounding areas. I know I've been to the Pete White Center and it's beautiful, and definitely want our community to take advantage of it as much as possible. But just want to know if there are any efforts to, make sure the residents know about it, or if there's any marketing there that is being done at all.
Each of the operators are responsible for their marketing because the city has basically given them the building. We have a lease on it. We take care of any capital maintenance issues, but they're responsible for the day-to-day operations. So the marketing and operations is all on those operators. And the one south is with North Care. The one north is with the group called Healthy Living Incorporated. You can also find some information on the city's website within the Maps tabs.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Great. All right.
Thank you.
So much. So youth centers. Is Doug going to present that, or?
Yes, Doug Cupper is here from our Parks Department to talk to you about youth centers.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for inviting us. Thank you, Teresa, for allowing us to participate today. Before I actually get into youth centers, what David also deals with is once he builds them, somebody has to oversee them. So currently, the Parks and Recreation Department has helped with setting the performance goals and measures of the senior health and wellness facilities, and the Parks and Recreation Department is responsible for oversight of the leases and the operations. So if there are comments or concerns or questions that are posed about these facilities, the Parks and Recreation Department helps to get the information out to the members or the residences. We also have participated in land acquisition adjacent to Maps 3 number 4 down on the south side. So we will actually have a park presence in conjunction with that youth or that senior center as it gets created and comes up out of the ground. So we consider these as our senior centers that we help to try to promote. We don't, again, going back to Mr. Hernandez's question, we don't actively get involved with the marketing because that's what the contract is for with the provider. But we do have them listed, and if we can partner on advertising or getting people out, the Parks and Recreation Department helps with that. So moving on to youth centers. About 3 years ago, I sat down with some of our partner groups, Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, PAL, and we started looking at the needs. It was actually before we even started thinking about Maps 4, trying to figure out how to bring services into those hard-hit communities to provide mentoring and ways to get their education even expanded upon or things along those lines. We watched the success of the sports complexes that were being created at the high schools by Fields and Futures. We saw what the team sports and things along those lines can do for our young people, but we also discovered that that's only one small facet of that. So we started talking about what the Parks and Recreation Department could do, since we are already got 13, 14, 15 buildings spread out across the community. We started looking at what we could do, what we could expand upon at our facilities. If you would go on to the next slide, please. We started looking at our assets that we have, and the next couple of slides show you what our current buildings look like, and what the reality of those are. This is our Northwest Optimist. This is a performing arts center. If you notice, we're up around 6,000 square feet for these buildings, not 10,000 for the previous one at Pitts. And in those facilities, we're trying to actually program for people that aren't walking yet to those that may have trouble walking because they have gained years of experience. So we're trying to cover the whole spectrum of our community at these locations. Go ahead. This is our performing arts. You can see that when you only got about 5,000 square feet, you got to be creative in your story. We actually teach acting and music at these locations, and our staff has acquired sets, props, and costumes over the years. Go ahead. Again, some of the spaces that we're talking about trying to program. Go ahead. We multifunction. This is an art and crafts room, but it's also a homework help room. It adds, you know, you're very limited at the spaces within our facilities. Go ahead. We even try to have computer labs so the kids can get online. We have had English as a second language classes at our facilities, and some of those are facilitated via the internet. So we're trying to be robust with, you know, these buildings that are quite small and quite old. Most of these buildings were built in the 60s. Okay. As it relates to youth centers, you can go on to the next one. We took a look at what modern recreational facilities are being built by some of the areas within, you know, what would be normally considered our peer cities. We looked in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we looked in the Colorado area, and of course we wanted to expand upon what we're trying to accomplish here in Oklahoma City. So we targeted North Richland Hills and Louisville, Colorado. So we wanted to show you what these facilities look like. And the first one is North Richland Hills. You can see it's a 70,000 square foot facility. Now you think about that, that's our largest facility that we have was running about 6,000 square feet, maybe a little bigger. And you wonder why I'm showing you a 70,000 square foot building. We need to have non-traditional activities at these locations. As I mentioned, we've discovered that we can provide for the sporting endeavors, but what about the scholastic? What about the young ladies that don't want to play soccer, or don't want to play football, or don't want to play basketball, or the young men that they don't have an interest in that? What about performing arts? What about EGaming now? That's a big thing. We talk about their fundamental needs at these youth centers, like having a haberdashery, for a lack of a better term, somewhere where they can get clothing if they don't have access to being able to get clothing. We want to make sure that they have access to healthy foods. So not only having a kitchen that can prepare meals while they're at the facility, but can we have a pantry? Can we provide them, through our partnerships with the food bank, which we already have established, providing food for these young people to take home and share with their families? We want to make sure that we partner, and you will be, if you haven't already talked about the Palomar and those other social agencies that are part of MAPS 4, we envision Palomar at least having a partnership and office time or space where they can visit with these young people that may need that type of assistance. Maybe they have family members that are abusive or addicted or need those kind of services that the other organizations that are going to benefit from MAPS 4, we want them participating in these youth centers. That's our vision for these youth centers. Those take space. You need to have those spaces. As David pointed out on the senior health and wellness facilities, one facility is built with more clinical rooms, more classrooms, more spaces for that type of activity. So we want to make sure that we impart to you all that You need to get beyond basketball or pickleball or weightlifting. We'd like to have those entities in here, but we want to make sure that we are programming these sites for the whole person. If you go on to the Louisville, here's an 85,000 square foot facility. Again, indoor aquatics, maybe not so much at the youth centers, but we got to be thinking what it is they need. And then what age? Where do you start with these mentorings or these youth interactions? And when the young people are supposed to actually be in their middle schools or in their high schools, if you have an 85,000 square foot building, you want it being used. So we're thinking that we can expand. We can do young children development. We can get the teen parents, male or female, into these facilities, give them some place where their young children are being cared for, and those young people can learn and read and be ready for when they start school, but we also can have mentoring and assistance for those teen parents, that just to make sure that they're getting the training and have access to services that help them be good parents, so we can keep them functioning in a high quality circumstances. So we want to make sure that these facilities, at least we plant the seed with you all, that these facilities are not just for 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. We got to get down into the pre-kindergarten. It's been proven by psychiatrists and psychologists that the moral compass of a human being is set by the time they're the age of a third grader. So if we're only focusing on, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, we're going to have a lot of readjusting to bring them back if they have strayed. We want to make sure that we also try to give something to these younger people as a safe place, and they have access and can get that family unity in a positive way at these locations. Now, we'll move on to the next slide. And this is our Willa D. Johnson Recreation Center that we just got the bids in yesterday for. This one's going to be a 33,000 square foot building. It's going to have the aquatics just like our senior health and wellness. It's going to have the gymnasiums. It's going to have the community rooms and kitchens. But again, this is a facility that will be focusing on being open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for all ages. We want to make sure that we're giving something into the community from a full service recreation facility and not targeting specific age groups, because obviously you want to make sure you maximize the use of that spaces as we go forward. This was just bid. We'll be going to City Council for awarding and negotiating the contract very quickly in October to start construction after the first year of the first full-service modern recreation center that the city of Oklahoma City has ever had. Go on to the next slide. Program spaces, again, non-traditional, that you would not normally think about a Parks and Recreation agency providing. Go ahead. Sewing classes so that we can, teach young people some of those things some of those skills that their grandparents might have taught them, if they still had grandparents, something other than just the traditional. Go ahead. Again, homework assistance, we want to make sure that we have a quality space for technology and those type of things. Go ahead. EGaming is going to be big. Colleges have created it. There are world athletes now that are making in the millions of dollars from their sponsors to be e-gamers. We want to make sure that we help bring this along and get our troubled youth, where these facilities should be built, the opportunity to participate in these type of activities as well. Go ahead. And again, each one, as David pointed out, each of the senior centers are a little bit different. we envision that possibly the youth centers may be a little bit different. Maybe we have one that focuses more on the performing arts rather than e-gaming even. So, but again, that's dialogue that has to be created, but we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for all types of young people to participate in. Go ahead. The next, go ahead. This map is really depicts where the highest level of juvenile crime is occurring currently in Oklahoma City. So we have, you know, previous to even thinking about being able to get anything into MAPS 4, back in 15, 16, we started looking at this and how can we help try to stem the youth from going down the wrong path. And we've overlaid our Parks and Rec facilities into these heat maps. We got Woodson Park right there in the center of a very high-end area. It's south of the 240 complex, 240 highway, but it's right in the heart of high crime. The last time I talked to the police department, there was like 17 individual gangs operating in and around our Woodson Park facility. So we're recommending to y'all to look within, if you will, think about the Parks and Recreation Department, think where we already have land masses that touch these areas. Another one in the area is we're going to be at one end of that red blotch along I-35 with our new Willa D. Johnson facility. So somewhere south of that, possibly for a youth center, or for that matter, expanding the Willa D. Johnson facility to accommodate some of those other activities that we talked that our vision shows for youth centers. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about youth centers.
Any questions for Doug?
Doug, I have a question. This is Bob Nealon. What is the plan for the existing facilities? Will they continue in operation, or will they be closed down once we get new youth centers built?
Well, I think it depends on where you end up targeting those assets to be. If we went into the Woodson area, we have a fairly new remodeled gymnasium there. So, you know, it would be my recommendation that we wrap that gymnasium with these new facilities and these new assets and not spend $4 or $5 million building a gymnasium. That way you can stretch those dollars out into the other youth centers. And again, it depends on where we end up putting these youth centers. But if we go into some of those areas where we have the older 50-60 model community centers, I would eliminate those buildings that are drain on they're not environmentally sensitive, they're not weather sensitive. Do away with those old buildings and build the new buildings on those locations, utilizing the assets that we may or may not already have in those parks. Splash pads, playgrounds, sports fields. Most of our parks have pretty good amenities in them. Of course, you will see in our next presentation, we have a lot that are lacking as well. But that would be my recommendation is look at our real estate, look at our facilities, and where we have quality facilities that are economically feasible and environmentally feasible, we keep those, but then wrap them with new assets and the new way of thinking of how we can best serve these young people.
To the extent those current locations remain active, do you anticipate they would be absorbed by the operating partners that will be working in the new centers, or will the city just continue to maintain them as they are now?
Well, again, not to be presumptuous on my part, but I would be remiss if I didn't do my job and say, I am your operating partner for those youth centers. And again, it's the zone of influence of where these buildings go. a lot of our antiquated buildings could be eliminated and reverted to green space so that the neighborhood that those buildings sit in would have access to more green space, possibly sports fields, possibly skate parks, possibly, you're going to hear about pickleball in my next presentation. Maybe those buildings get eliminated, and that's where we build the pickleball courts. So again, it depends on where you all think these assets should go, and then again, what we have in those locations. We actually mapped out 6 locations back in 16 based on this heat map that is still on your screen. We targeted those areas because they're already on Embark's transit routes, so that the young people would have accessibility through our bus transit system to get to these locations.
Thank you.
Other questions? Doesn't look like so, Doug. So I think, Doug, you're going to present on parks as well, if you want to.
Yes, ma'am. We're bringing that up. You are hearing me okay? It's a remote mic, so I just want to make sure you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very clear.
Thank you. Okay, you can go to the second slide, please. Currently, as I understand the proposition, the total budget was $140 million for park improvements. A portion of that will go into the investment pool to be able to sustain the care and conditions of the facilities that you all will see to get built. So we'll move on. Again, as we understand it, $63 million to upgrade, and this is the key, upgrade every neighborhood and community park outside the central business district, with $16.5 million for operating funds to provide for, the maintenance, the improved maintenance. I just want to point out to you that as we go into the next slide, but that's currently, right now, as of today, our master plan shows that we have 21 community parks and 85 neighborhood parks for a total of 106 parks. Now, obviously, you can all do the math. If we do it unilaterally and equally, you got to divide the 106 parks into the $63 million. So you're probably talking right at $500,000 per park. So I want to express that to you that between the 2007 GO and the 2017 GO, we have either pretty much touched most of these parks, or we anticipate touching those parks through the 2017 GO. So I'd be happy to come back and talk with you more about how it might be best served to utilize that 63. Just so you have an understanding, if nothing else, we can provide David so that you have it, what parks, a lot of the 2007 bond park improvements were done in the last 3 to 5 years of the 2000. So we've got 67 projects that were done last year to a lot of these 106 parks. I just want to make sure that we talk about that, and you have knowledge of that, so that if you want more information, we can provide it to David so he can get it to you all. Now, improvements, and this is by no means a fully thought out list. This is just for thinking purposes. Playground structures, park furnishings, that's your picnic tables, your park benches, down to what kind of trash cans, even light fixtures. Restrooms been a big conversation that we've had over the last year and a half. Just what kind of elements should a park have? So park concepts. trees should never be forgotten about as a park improvement, and we'll show you samples of that as we go. Go ahead, please. This is an example of some of our current playgrounds that did not get, or they might have gotten done in 2007, and by the time we get into your activities with this $65 million, they will have surpassed their life expectancy from being put in 2007. But you can see that one of the playgrounds is out in the bare grass. That's not adequate safety surfacing to keep our young people safe when they're playing on the playgrounds. Again, modern concepts for playgrounds. You know, who wouldn't want to have something like this in their neighborhood park? I challenge you not to want to play on this yourself, let alone if you're 8, 9, or 10-year-old. Go ahead. Again, the one on the right, the playground on the right, if you go over to Tulsa to the gathering place, I think you'll find something almost exactly like these at the gathering place. And if Tulsa can do it, we can do it. Go ahead. Again, we want to make sure that we think about putting shade structures up over, whether it's this elaborate a playground or a simple playground. We want to start thinking about adding shade structures so that you know, the slide doesn't get to 125 degrees, or those railings are hotter than that. Thank you. Go ahead. Again, furnishings that we have currently in the park, you got your WPA concrete picnic table there in the bottom right, old style picnic shelters and furnishings. Go ahead. Again, modern. The picnic table on the right is a handicap accessible so that somebody in a wheelchair can hang out with their coworkers or their family members and enjoy the park. Go ahead. I really don't have to talk about this slide. We'll move on to the next one. We anticipate a lot of conversations revolving around modern restrooms. A lot of people have, again, before MAPS 4 was created and we had any indication that we would be a big piece of MAPS 4, a lot of conversations surrounding restrooms. They've targeted the kind that you might find in Europe that have air space from ground to maybe a foot high. Those are, they don't last, they don't survive vandals. They're not very sanitary as well. We want modern, and this actually is a prefab. It was actually created in Washington, put on a tractor trailer and delivered to our Route 66 park. So they're functional. They can be clad any which way. They can have any architectural elements that anybody can think of, roof lines, wall cladding, but they're almost bomb-proof, and they can survive vandals. Go ahead. Currently, we would also want to talk about our current splash pads. We have 19 of these across the city. These were designed as, well, they're not environmentally sensitive. The water that you see these kids playing in goes straight to the sanitary sewer and on their way to the sewage treatment plant. 19 of these facilities cost the taxpayers $300,000 in water alone annually. It is a safe, there is no doubt about it. It is a safe way, no chance of any kind of contaminants coming in contact with these children. But the new technology that we have for filtering and purifying the water so that this water could be reutilized so that we could reduce not just our water bill, but the water consumption of the Parks and Recreation Department. We try to be good stewards of our assets. We would like to be able to modernize these facilities and recycle the water with modern UV decontaminations, filtrations, and things along those lines. Planting the seed for your consideration going forward. But also as we produce new parks and we talk about new playgrounds, go ahead to the next slide. You know, this combines playground elements with water features. So, you know, we would want you to think about the possibility of having a joint playground and water usage area. Because even in the wintertime when the water usages are turned off, you can still play on the playground. Go ahead. And again, bringing the indoors to the outdoors, we started an odyssey to bring fitness courts, modern fitness activities out of the buildings and into the great outdoors. We have 4 of these now. We would like to build at least 6 more of these across the city to, again, bring modern fitness activities into as many communities as we can so that people would not have an excuse that they can't afford a gym, they don't want to drive to the gym. If we can get these strategically placed across the city, we can help make our citizens a little healthier. And it's unique that you had Mayor Cornett on. We had him in mind when we started down the path of finding these to go up with his £1 million lost by our citizens. So we want to plant that seed and try to keep that going through MAPS 4. Go ahead. And again, trees. You know, how much better does a park look with green trees? We're providing shade. You know, if you're out in the park, you're exercising, you know, outdoor yoga classes amongst the canopies, things along those lines. We don't want you to forget about planting trees as part of your park improvements, but the mayor also has $1 million in MAPS 4 specifically for planting trees. So we want to make sure that we keep that top of mind as you think about improving our 106 parks, that we think about trees as well. Go ahead. Now, again, the MAPS 4, outside of the $65 million for neighborhood and community park improvements, we also had specifically $500,000 for basketball, pickleball courts. I would tell you right today that we have more than enough basketball courts already. We have no pickleball courts. So I would recommend that we focus on that aspect rather than on basketball. If we do think about basketball courts, a couple of the NBA players have foundations where they're going into inner city parks and building basketball courts or refurbishing basketball courts. So we would want to make sure that we recommend that we explore that possibility to, again, trying to stretch that MAPS for dollars the best we can. Go ahead. What we don't have is one place where we could have tournaments and things along those lines. We would strongly recommend to you that we create at least one 8, 9, 12 court pickleball area so that we can capitalize. This is the second fastest growing sport in America. Ironically, skateboarding still tops the charts, believe it or not. And as we see more and more 50 and 60-year-old skateboarders at Stars and Stripes and Matt Hoffman, you can understand why it's probably still one of the fastest growing sports. So again, we want to make sure that we focus on that. Go ahead. And our sports tourism complexes that we have built into the MAPS section, there's $29 million. Originally, it's been targeted for the very north side of the city and the very south side of the city. On the south side of the city has invested in 17 soccer fields at our South Lakes complex. We are proposing that a number of those fields, again, not being presumptuous, but we would recommend to you all that we carry forth the idea and the intent of this pool of money to look at replacing the natural turf with artificial turf at our South Lakes. And ironically, the city of Oklahoma City's Parks and Recreation Department does not have one single soccer field in the whole of the north end of the city. CB Cameron Park, which is operated by North OKC Soccer, is on Water Utility Trust property at this point in time. It's been there for 15 or so years. It was created when the Hefner Parkway was built. It has, the majority of its 19 fields are small youth fields. We hope to be able to create somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 full-size soccer pitches at CB Cameron Park, and we will be acquiring the land from the water utilities at the first of the year as part of the 2017 GEO bond program. So how the funds will actually be created, we want to make sure that we have lighted sports fields on the north end of town, lighted sports fields on the south end of town through this particular sports tourism funding. And we would like to have 3, 4, 5 artificial turf fields. We want to make sure that we can maximize these complexes Monday through Friday by having them lit so the leagues can play their games Monday through Thursday, and we can use these complexes for regional and national tournaments on the weekends. Currently, our athletes have to go to Dallas-Fort Worth is the closest, or Overland Park, Kansas, north of us. So our people are either going south or going north, and the Kansas people are driving right through Oklahoma City on 35 headed to Frisco, Texas. We want to try to stop that here in Oklahoma City. Go ahead. This is indicative of what we're trying to accomplish. This is the Shields Soccer Complex in Overland Park. And believe it or not, my golf trust specialist is headed up there with his family next weekend to play a tournament at this complex. Go ahead. And this is the one, this is the Pizza Hut facility in Frisco, Texas. And if any of you have young people playing soccer, competitive soccer, you've probably been to one or both of these facilities. Go ahead. And this is what the vision is for Cameron Park once it's been converted over to full pitches. And again, in anticipation of your embracing the work that has been done in creating the sports tourism section of MAPS 4. Go ahead. Just elements that we'd like to recommend to you all. Go ahead. River improvements, again, we want to make sure that we embrace, most of this was submitted by the Oklahoma City River Redevelopment Authority, because the Oklahoma City River Redevelopment Authority actually has a lease for all of the park property that is on both sides of the river from city limits to city limits. They manage, they oversee, they try to create opportunities for people to actually come in contact with the river. And of course, we want to make sure that we continue to try to support activities in and around the First American Museum that has been created on the river. Go ahead. And the yellow push pins that you see on here are only, again, we worked on some of this before MAPS 4 was created, so we had some forethought. On the far left side of your screen, you have a push pin on Okra property at Western and the river. That's vacant land that Okra would like to see the utilities brought in there so it'd be developable for restaurants or other activities on the river. Just, again, activating some vacant real estate on the river. The next push pin is a river cruisers landing, again, to support the Wiley Post Park and our south residents to be able to access the river cruisers, or it could possibly be put on the north shore of the river to support the south end of Scissortail Park. The other ones are again, the river cruise landing up in the First Americans area of the city, and possible pedestrian bridge at the low water dam that is east of the First Americans facility. Again, just suggestions. This is a typical one of our river cruise landings. Go ahead. Not an atypical amphitheaters, but you get the idea that probably something simple with fixed seatings, possibly a concrete environment to have performers. Go ahead. And again, this is a simplification. That bridge wouldn't fit on our river, but again, a pedestrian bridge to be able to access the south side to the north side, the north side to the south side. Go ahead. And again, we want to try to create a investment area for Okra at Western and the river, similar to what we have at the East Wharf on Water Utilities property. Go ahead. Community gardens, again, a separate pool of money from the $63 million for community gardens. We want to make sure that we go into the food desert areas of our community, throughout our community, and possibly help create vegetable gardens for the community to benefit from. Go ahead. Typical plots that could be actually leased to a family to raise their vegetables. We have studied in other communities that have gone down this path where they have created these in low economic. We're talking, you know, a mere $5. It provides to make sure that the water is there, that if they need access to mulch or compost, that we can provide those type of opportunities so that families can maximize the production from their gardens. Go ahead. And these are some of the other things that were specifically outlined in our section of Maps 4. $2.5 million for placemaking down at Stanley Draper. This is in conjunction with the 13-mile bicycle trail, multi-use trail that Maps 3 created down there. We want to make sure that we maximize the uses of the park property down there as well as the trail, let alone the fishing and boating opportunities. $5 million. The planning department's federal funded section, the neighborhood enhancement organization, did a neighborhood awareness and strategic planning, and we helped with creating a master plan for Booker T. Washington Park. And the price tag was placed at $5 million to do the improvements that the neighborhood would like to see there. Booker T. Washington Park is on Northeast 4th, just past the Innovation District. Again, one of those other assets that are functions that Maps 4 will be looking at. And then $2.2 million to enhance the Northeast Community Center. Again, that's one of those neighborhood and community parks that you won't have to use a portion of the 65 or 63 million, in our opinion, to enhance, because Northeast Community Center, that park already has this $2 million separate from the 63. Go ahead. Again, other things that were stipulated, new parks in those areas of the city that that the residences have grown, but we have not expanded the Parks Department. A total of $10 million. Okay. And then that's it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I talked fast and gave you a lot of information. I apologize for that. I could go on for another 8 hours on Parks and Recreation. And unfortunately, Teresa already knows that.
I was going to say, yes, he can. But it's always, I always learn something, and he is a great steward. We're very lucky to have Doug and his experience and expertise. Kevin, I know that you have to hop off, so I was going to see if you have any questions before you have to go.
No, I'm just wondering, Doug, you mentioned there's like 106 city parks throughout the city. Is that right?
Actually, we have 170 parks, but the 63 million can only be spent on 106.
Okay. And is there a directory of where all those are located? I'm just curious. I know a lot of neighborhood parks, as you know, in the various neighborhoods I've lived in, small city parks and all that. But is there a list of those?
Yeah, it's on our parks website. You can find all of our 170 parks. The obvious ones that you may not think of, Scissortail is one of our 170 parks. Mirror Gardens is one of our 170 parks. Regatta Park, where the Whitewater and the Boathouse District is, that's one of our 170 parks. And in downtown, Bicentennial Park out in front of the Civic Center, we actually have created City Hall campus as one of our neighborhood parks. So again, those are in the downtown corridor, so they don't qualify for these as well. But we do have 170 parks.
Okay, thank you. That's all I got, Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Other questions of Doug?
Yes, Teresa, this is Harry Black.
Yes, Harry.
Yes, Doug, some of the more modern or contemporary playground equipment creates enclosed kind of isolating spaces, even an enclosed slide or enclosed platforms. How do you address concerns of isolation, potential child abuse, bullying, things like that in unsupervised parks?
Very good question. We do not recommend putting any tube slides in on any of these advanced styles of playgrounds. We want to make sure that any platform or area has actually child-proof but visual see-through elements so that people can't congregate or get cornered within a dark space. So, we take that very seriously in the Oklahoma City Parks and Recreation Department, and where tube slides have been put in under past programs, we're trying to retrofit and take those out.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
Doug, this is Russell Pace. I was curious, some of the historic elements that you showed, like the WPA parks, what's the plan to preserve those?
Well, yeah, obviously we want to preserve those concepts. One perfect example of that is we did a retrofit on our picnic shelter at Will Rogers Park. It's made from our native Oklahoma red stone, and we were able to make it ADA compliant, but keep it within what the WPA created of that element. The problem with our some of our WPA concrete picnic tables is, once one gets broken, you can't match that aged concrete very well. So do you try to do that, or do you eliminate that particular system out of the? But our structures and things along those lines, I'm a big proponent of trying to make sure that we preserve and protect our historic roots, and most of those have been identified in our recently improved master plan, so we have those cataloged and we can keep track of them. That the new master plan will be going to the city council probably the 1st of November. They approved the original master plan in April of 2014. This is an update for that, but we've taken the initiative to make sure we identify those historic areas so that we can be cognizant of them going forward.
One other question. What's the plan for the area going into the new Girl Scout area over there in Lincoln Park?
That is the domain of a lease that the city of Oklahoma City has with the zoo. So they are responsible for all of that real estate, and they hold the sublease for the Girl Scout facility that's going in on that property. It's actually all part of Lincoln Park, but years ago, the city leased out that portion of Lincoln Park to the zoo, and the whole lake falls within their lease holdings.
Very good. Thank you.
I had a question, Doug. This is Brenda.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm thinking about the 106 parks that we have throughout the city, and just thinking about what priority we're going to give to those parks that are really needing more of those improvements. I know some of them are in a little more need than others. And I know that it is going to be based on the need and the neighborhood's feedback. Just wanted to hear what we're going to do to try to get some of that feedback from our neighborhoods.
Good. Again, great questions. Teresa, you got a great committee. The Parks and Recreation Department has a very robust and in-depth inventory of every park and every asset within those parks. We pretty much know when a playground was installed, when a picnic shelter was built, when the walking path was created, if there are basketball courts or futsal courts on them, we know when they were created, when they were built, what condition they are in. We have a grading system for our Parks and Rec assets. So we can provide you pick the park and we can give you the inventory of that park, what our certified playground safety inspectors have on the grade of the playground at that park, what condition the sidewalk is, if there's a sidewalk along the street. So we can provide you with that kind of information, and we can be between the Board of Park Commissioners being a public entity that has thorough knowledge of our park system, being a possible avenue for the public meetings. A portion of their agenda could be set up as a MAPS 4 agenda item to get information from neighborhoods. We would be more than happy. Staff and I, Melinda McMillan Miller is my assistant director. She's here with me today. In 2015, we did 12 neighborhood engagements in preparation of the 2017 GO. In 2016, we did another nearly 12 neighborhood meetings to talk to people about their neighborhood parks and what they thought should be in the facilities and things along those lines. So and currently again, prior to us having knowledge, we started the creation of an RFP to hire an outside consulting firm to look at our recreation facilities. We did one on athletics. We can tell you chapter and verse what condition our athletics are in, what they foresee our population will be needing, what it is we should be striving to create on athletics. We want to do the same thing from a recreation perspective. And we hope to have that RFP out on the street for our own benefit, but it would also benefit MAPS 4 from a youth center perspective, as well as the $63 million worth of improvements. We hope to have that RFP out before the end of this year so that we can start getting a consultant collecting the data we need to tell us what direction we should be going in. But we can be that asset, and we can provide, we can do those neighborhood meetings in conjunction with the MAPS 4 committee. We're well versed on doing that, and we've been in almost every neighborhood already in the last 6 years.
And Brenda, I'll just add, in addition to what Doug is saying has already been completed, what you're kind of, I'm trying to read your mind through your question, is part of what we will go through in the implementation plan is kind of looking through that and putting together some of those pieces. And then the granular level of specific components and specific parts and parks, really the subcommittee digs in deep on setting up those all of those pieces. So there's a couple of opportunities to both look at the existing feedback, gain new feedback, and then put that all together as we move forward with implementing the parks budget or the parks MAPS budget.
Yes. No, and you know, I really hope we can take that into consideration, and also the just the demographics of those neighborhoods, I think will be very important to consider. When I hear about those courts, you know, that will potentially be built, whether it's basketball courts or pickleball courts, I'm just thinking about the demographics and those kids that are actually playing on those courts. I know that each neighborhood is going to look very different. And so I just definitely think we should try to get as much feedback from the neighborhood.
You're absolutely right. To make this of value to the residents in those areas, we've got to listen to what's important.
We want them to be used.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Great question.
Teresa, this is Shay. I did just want to, I don't have a question, but I did want to thank Doug for providing the suggestions on where improvements are most needed and where assets would best be used. I found that really informative. So thank you, Doug.
My pleasure. Teresa or David, I guess, if you'd like, as soon as we publish our master plan, which should be in the next couple of weeks, we'd be happy to get the MAPS 4 commission each a copy of that master plan, so you can see how much studying and demographics have been identified already in our master plan. So that'll give you a leg up as well, if you would like to have that.
Yes, thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Any other questions for Doug today? Okay. So next, I think we'll move to agenda item number 7, comments by board, staff, or citizens. And I would ask if we have any citizens that have signed up to speak.
We do not.
Okay. Board, staff, any comments?
I have a question about the future subcommittees. Is the plan to proceed with subcommittees similar to MAPS 3 as well?
Similar, yes. So all of the 16 projects have been divided up into 6 groupings. And so there will be 6 subcommittees for the MAPS 4 projects, similar in structure, representing different parts of the community, different geographic parts of our community. In MAPS 3, there was a subcommittee for each project. And so it's a little bit different. 16 subcommittees is rather unwieldy for particularly the MAPS office, as they're still working on MAPS 3. But there were a number of the projects that really just fold in on each other. So for example, parks and youth centers and senior wellness, those they're going to mish and mash together and can be supportive together. And so that's why the mayor and city council determined to cluster the 16 projects into 6 subcommittees. The mayor and I have talked about the timing of starting to put together the subcommittees, and quite frankly, with the pandemic, the economic impact on the tax collections, although we definitely need to get the subcommittees appointed, the urgency has kind of slid back just slightly. So I know he's thinking about it. He's talking with city council members. So we're probably looking at winter to early spring of getting the subcommittees appointed.
Thank you.
And Teresa, in regards to the subcommittees, I know that there's going to be a couple of members from the advisory board on these different committees. Would we express interest to you, or how will that be determined as far as?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I would love your thoughts on what any particular one of these projects or groups that you would be interested in. And that's something we can talk about. So as I love, and I so very much appreciate that David Todd wanted to spend these first few of our meetings together having presentations so that we as the Citizens Advisory Board can kind of get caught up to speed, if you will, on the presentations that were made to City Council. But yes, as you're hearing these presentations, thinking about what you have a particular interest and passion for is great.
Wonderful. Okay. Did you want us to email you, or would we do it during the meeting?
You can email me at any time. Yeah. And then, yeah, or give me a call and we can talk about it.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
I have a question. Yes, on the resolution, there's a section titled Sidewalks, Bike Lanes, Trails, and Streetlights. Is that its own presentation, or is that just included in something else, or how does that work?
It will be its own presentation because just as Doug talked about some of the iterations of public support, whether it be bond issue or maps, different maps, there's been a lot of work on sidewalks, trails, and bike lanes. And so yeah, we will get a presentation on what that plan, there's actually a plan. And so that will be a separate plan or a separate presentation.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions by the board or comments? Any staff comments for today?
We don't have anything. Thank you.
But I've got one last thing, real quick. So just as David and I were visiting a little bit, that unless the legislature enters into a special session to extend the exception to the Open Meeting Act, allowing virtual meetings to count as meetings before November 15th, then this exception will expire. And so we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, whether the legislature is going to take that action or not, but I did want to go ahead and get on everybody's radar that we will meet virtually in November. But after that, we may be looking at needing to convene in chambers. David has shared with me that the city has put in place the plexiglass separators. They have their cleaning protocols, their safety protocols inside the building. So I think it's about as safe an environment as we can go into. But I did want to go ahead. I didn't want that to end up being a surprise, and wanted to give all of you as much advance notice as we're contemplating that change. David, anything I missed on that?
Nope, that is spot on, Madam Chair.
Okay. All righty. Well, if we don't have anything else for today's meeting, then I will adjourn our meeting today and look forward to seeing you in a month. Happy Halloween, everybody, and enjoy our beautiful fall weather.
Thanks all.
All right.
Okay,
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.